Hey everyone, I just wanted to drop this plyo workout. I've been doing it about once or twice a week and just really felt like it's helping my jumps and overall stability. I have shortened this workout, so it only takes about 20 to 30 minutes. It can be done at home or at a gym, and really just with minor modifications to the warm-up if you don't have access to a treadmill until it gets a little bit warmer outside, and then you can incorporate more running into your warm-up. So the goal of the workout is to increase overall force production on some of your jumps and improve tendon stiffness to build more reactivity. My advice is just to make every rep as explosive as possible, like max effort. I'll define rep ranges for each exercise, but if you feel fatigued from before completing all reps in a set, stop the exercise. This is not meant to be tiring from a cardio perspective. However, your muscles should feel significantly fatigued from the max effort stimulus. So some of these exercises can be done with added weight, but I'd recommend starting with body weight movements until your body gets used to them and you feel stable. Once you're comfortable with the movements and your stability improves, you can start to add weight and then from there add a little bit more stimulus. So we'll walk through a warm-up, some of the exercises like the plyometric exercises, and then some mobility and stability movements at the end as a cool down. Okay, as previously shown, I do like to start with a dead mill, which is done with the treadmill off. So basically you place your back against the front of the treadmill and push the belt forward by extending your legs. This really helps to warm up the patellar tendon, provides a strong concentric stimulus to quickly activate the quads, and then gets the knees warmed up and prepared for jumping. After about 2 to 3 minutes of that, my knees are starting to feel good, so I move on to a light jog for about 4 minutes. I'm not a big fan of running, so I keep it short, but it's a great way to wake up the nervous system, loosen the hips and ankles, prep the calves and Achilles, and just really gradually load the patellar tendon to get ready to jump. Okay, my next favorite exercise to do are Bulgarian split squats. I feel like they really engage the glutes, the quads, the hammies, reinforce good knee and hip alignment, and also just opens up the hip flexors. A huge thing here is just making sure to continue to build single leg stability. You can see my knees are even a little bit shaky. I don't have a ton of leg strength, and especially as I switch to my left leg, there will be a little bit of shakiness there, but just make sure that it's all in like a straight line and your knees aren't buckling inside or buckling outside too much, and having a controlled tempo and controlling the eccentric on the way down. So you don't need to go super slow, but at least make sure that you're feeling some resistance and controlling that downward movement. You can be a little bit more explosive on the way up, but again, really make sure we're controlling the tempo here. Moving on, I am doing heel elevated squats here. Again, really making sure to control the eccentric portion, which is our downward load, and then going up after that. So the knees are going over the toes a little bit, same type of cues as last time. Make sure there's no knee buckling. But for this and for the Bulgarian split squats, I like to do probably between 8 to 12 reps. And usually I do 2 sets of the Bulgarians and 1 set of this because my knees are feeling pretty good at this time. Okay, moving on, I like to jump rope. You don't necessarily need a rope for this either. If you don't have a jump rope, you can just kind of do mini pogos in place. But I really like this for activating the calves and activating the Achilles, starting to build some of that tendon stiffness as well. Mix it around, do some higher jumps, do some lower jumps, do one leg, whatever you need to do to make sure you feel like you're warming up well. Generally, I do it for about 1 minute to 2 minutes. So a really good warm up, getting in like probably 100 jumps or so, but not really wearing you down too much before you start the actual workout. Okay, getting out of our warm-up section and into our first exercise, which are weighted pogos. Again, I would start unweighted if you have never done pogos before, just so that your tendons get used to the load that's being put on them. But we're looking for about 30 reps here, and then also about 3 sets. So the biggest thing right now is going to be ground contact. We want to limit as much as we can and be really explosive off the ground. So focus on keeping your Achilles tight and really using the balls of your feet to jump as high as you can. Again, max effort for every single pogo. We're doing 3 sets of these. All right, this is the next exercise, just a simple weighted box jump. Quick downward motion into a big load to imitate like the load when you're about to jump through your penultimate step, and then huge violent explosion upwards onto the box. I like to do these weighted, but you can do them unweighted if you want. Aiming for about 8 reps, 8 to 10 reps in 3 sets. We don't really want to go above 10 reps because then we start to get into cardio range, and we want to make each rep as explosive as possible. Moving on, we are going to do some step close work. So again, max effort jump here, but only through the last 2 steps of the approach. We are going to load low through that penultimate step, which is the second to last step, and already start to create and mimic some of the rotation from our hitting approach. So turn your toes in and then rotate through that last jump. As you're jumping, we're going to target probably 5 or 6 reps here, but max effort, and we're going to do about 2 to 3 sets of these. All right, so the next thing we are going to do is progress from the step close into a full max effort approach with our 4 steps. So starting slow to fast, building speed in your approach, building rotation through the last step, making sure to load through that penultimate step, and getting the arms working as well to continue to build speed and height. So you should feel really tired after these. We probably want to only do like 5 or 6, and again, 2 or 3 reps max. All right, moving on into a little bit more lateral movement here. We're going into the ski jumps. Big thing here is to make sure when you land, you feel really stable before moving on to the next jump. So once you start to build that stability, you can go a little bit quicker. But again, really explosive, violent movement as far as you can jump left to right, and then landing stable and making sure you feel comfortable on the ground before moving on to the next jump. Okay, and the last exercise that we have for this little plyo workout, I don't really know what to call it. It's just a little compound movement. So I like to almost modify it like I'm doing a split step and then pushing off the left foot right into the right foot and then exploding back immediately into a jump. So this could be great for passers looking for a little bit more range off their split step, for middle blockers that are looking to get to pin a little bit faster, and then still building some of that ground reactivity. So make sure, again, like you're explosive off both the split step, and then also when you're lunging off that other leg right into the jump and then going straight up onto the box. For the pogos and also for this one, we're targeting about 6 reps for 2 sets on both exercises. All right, and that concludes our workout. So now we're going to move on to some mobility cool down stuff. I like to start with the couch stretch, keeping my back knee on the floor against a wall or a bench or a couch or whatever it might be, and put your front leg in the lunge position. I do like to kind of continuously pulse and stretch to make sure that I'm really lengthening those hip flexors and stretching the quad. But this one feels really good, and I would do this a couple of times. And then next up, my personal favorite stretch, side lunges. So it really does a good job of strengthening the inner thighs, improves lateral hip mobility, continues to build knee stability, and then also activates the glutes. This is really important for higher level liberos or anybody really that's doing defense or serve receive, making sure that we're still able to extend while keeping stability within our hip flexors and keeping that hip mobility active. And continuing on the hip mobility and hip stabilization exercises, I like to do opening and closing the gait. I like to rest my opposite leg against something, whether that be a couch, a table. In this case, it's a stationary bike. We're going up and around and then pushing back through as far as we can, and then going right back around and closing that gait. Hips are really important for mobility, and it's something you don't really necessarily notice until it starts to go wrong. So I definitely recommend doing this early for a lot of groin and hip injury prevention. Okay, and our last mobility and stability exercise is what I think is the most important one, actually, the single leg step down. So this is great for building knee strength and stability. Basically, we're lowering one leg and training the quads, the glutes, the hips, really everything to control the knee as it moves over the foot. And it also just helps to train our patellar tendon to absorb force when landing from things like jumps. So it strengthens the patellar tendon really well, which can help reduce the risk of patellar tendonitis by improving how the knee handles repeated trauma from jumping and landing. For these, we're looking for about 8 to 12 and probably about 2 sets. This is something, honestly, I would recommend doing, I don't know, maybe even every other day. Just find a slightly elevated surface and then slowly lower, and make sure you really control the downward and eccentric movement of the exercise to get the most out of it for your overall knee health.